Here we are again. Another wonderful day. It's 7:37 at night. It is August 25th. It is a Tuesday. And not much has been happening except the news has been going crazy all over the place. They're still having protests left and right concerning about Kenosh, Wisconsin regarding the shooting out there. Tragic as it is. The guy's still alive. He's paralyzed, but a lot of things shouldn't have happened the way it did, and it did. And now there's a hell of a lot of flack on that. Trump and his ilk are having their convention. News media is having a field day fact checking him. On the personal home front, nothing's been happening except trying to continue to go to online education. And it's a hell of a thing to go through, I'll tell you that much. And in between that, discovering old shows that are hiding about on YouTube. I've tried to talk about this on different personal recordings of mine. And one particular series, I get piecemeal, but it's still a delight to see every so often. The Highwaymen. I barely remember this show when it came out in the 80s. Well, there was a lot of shows I barely remember that in the 80s. And it didn't stay on the NBC too long. It should have. I mean, they had potential for it, but somehow it didn't quite pick up for the readers, viewers, and they kind of canceled it. I mean, almost a complete season of it, but it was still kind of adventurous to see Sam Jones and a guy named Jacko, and not to mention Tim Russ and Jane Badler going out there to battle the forces of screwed up government politics and government programs. Or corporates going crazy. And they view this as a dystopian society of sorts. Because what they were talking about with the technology that they had, this was back in the 80s and early 90s, and right now this is 2020. You talk about blowing your head off like crazy. You expected it to be about 2020, but no. When I see one particular character, lead character, talking with a guest star name of Chad Everett, Sam Jones, and Chad Everett. Whoa. Chad Everett, I remember seeing him on Medical Center and a few other shows left and right. But their characters are talking about the Vietnam War. So I know it's pretty dated. And the vehicles that they used were pretty dated too, but they were still cool looking back then. Compared to these days when you have computer CGI and God knows what else we're doing with. But just watching those old shows puts me back in different modes. Puts me way back, especially when I see maybe one or two or three and I get hooked. I want to see more, but there's not enough on there on the YouTube for it. So I'm just like, okay, well, I got to deal with it then. That's all right. That's all right. I'll deal with it. And the shows may or may not have made it, but I've watched those shows because I thought they were cool at the time. Try this one. Late 80s, early 90s. All throughout 90s. And going into the 21st century. Trying to get a movie to complete the series. Highlander. Duncan MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod. You have a movie series out there called Highlander, and talked about an immortal battling other immortals for the control of the earth. In order to control the earth, they got to kill off the immortals one by one by chopping off their heads. Of course, they made about 2 or 3 movies of those, and kind of flopped, but the original one didn't. But the concept of it still retained, and they continued with this as a TV series for a few seasons, and after that, crash and burn. But there was enough fandom movement for this thing to keep the series going, one way or another. Eventually, there was a movie about 10, 15, 20 years down the road, whatever happened with the cloud situation and how the Earth was supposed to be not an oasis, but a real garbage dump. People struggling to survive. Hell of a way to look at the future at this point over there, and then you got the immortals still fighting each other, trying to survive, and some of the other mortals trying to kill each other. But there was supposed to be this conjunction of some sort, all the planets and stars going into one orbit, or actually one position, and then they're supposed to have all power or something like that. There only could be one with the all power, and the thing is, the power was taken away, and then what's left of Duncan MacLeod is he has a family. And the mortal cannot bear children. They can marry, but they cannot bear children. They are impotent. Price of immortality. Kind of weird and kind of sucks. But watching this series, watching how immortals chopping off each other's head to gain power. You chopped off the head and you drop your sword or you keep your sword with you and you see this electricity coming from the body and from the head and filling the other guy up with the power of the immortal. Pretty freaky. Pretty freaky at all. I mean, it's the stuff that one would watch when one's a fan of some sort. A fan is the short term for fanatic. You can be fanatical about a lot of things. I've seen fandom go fanatical. I've seen fandom go insane. Growing up, I'd seen how fandom had driven people to save shows, to save events, even a letter writing campaign to save a TV series that only lasted 3 years, and then after that, 10 years later, they have the movie series. And then during the time of the movie series, between 79 all the way through the 90s, they've got TV series being spawned left and right. And the fandom continued, and the fandom grew, and grew, and grew, and grew, and mutated. A hell of a lot of fandoms out there intermixing with each other. Social media kicks in, the internet, and God knows what else happens. So now everything else is insane. But I had seen a long time ago how a few fandoms can actually take things almost to the point of why am I even here? Case in point. When I joined up with one organization, I'm not going to say to identify the organization or the club or the members or anything else like that, but I had been in a few organizations. One was pretty decent. Well, when one doesn't understand about humanity and tolerance and understanding what certain principles that the fandom that you're representing or enjoying at this point demonstrates, it gets a little confusing. That a lot of miscommunication happens and insanity happens, and then you hurt people left and right and you don't even realize it. All because of misunderstandings, miscommunications, and also not keeping an open mind on some things. I mean, when you're exposed to a new thing, it's scary as hell until you start to understand why. And then when you understand that, then it becomes a little bit more comfortable because now you're understanding it more and more. You're learning about it, but it doesn't mean you're going to be worshiping it. But it means you're comfortable with the situation there. That okay, fine, I acknowledge it. That's it. Don't have to be part of it, but you can just be acknowledging it, so it doesn't piss you off. And I've had situations like that where it has happened that way. I've also had another situation where going extreme and your exuberance in your character and how you portray that character in a format, writing up different scenarios, different stories, that your exuberance, or someone's exuberance, scared the hell out of people so much that they decided to take matters into their own hands. Instead of just canceling you out, they said they're going to lobotomize your character. When that kind of situation happens right there, it's like, nope, nope, I'm not joining this anymore. I've had a few clubs that have actually accepted people, but those were different times and different people and different things happening. These days, it's Interplex, and if you're not into it, you get lost and confused. You may have personal preferences of a specific genre and of a specific way you think it should be run. If that's the case, then maybe you should run it that way, or the way you think it should have been run in the first place, if you had your own club. But since you're part of a larger organization, you're part of a collective, you should be following the guidelines going on in a place. You should have to keep an open mind. But somehow that's not happening these days. Even when it comes down for the nastiest of all fandoms, when we have fantasy that morphs into reality, because this affects people more than fantasy does, when the reality is more directly involved than fantasy. And it's either a good thing, bad thing, poisonous thing, leeches, cockroaches, whatever you might call the thing. Dirty, rotten thing that people are involved with constantly. It's a Pandora's box, but it also starts with the letter P. I think you know what it is. Needless to say, the us versus them. All I'm going to say on that one. At least for the identification. And because of that, we have a convention of extreme fans trying to convince other people that they should retain, they should be, and others should not. Yeah, I know I'm tap dancing on the situation over here, and I am going to continue to tap dance on this one because of how insidious sometimes it can be, especially when we're dealing with pure reality and we're talking about something that affects everybody, everywhere. And it's the most insidious thing that man could ever do to himself. And this is not your typical science fiction fantasy stuff. This is pure reality. This is not sports. The P also rhymes with the letter G. As I gaze on the television, I look at something that starts with a W. And I'm seeing how my life right now is going to get maybe slightly easier to deal with temperature-wise. But when it comes down for the P and G, sometimes I wish we did have fandoms that would just treat it as something lightly and not heavily. Because unfortunately, some things are treated too heavily to where it's either or. You know, there used to be in fandom a lot of joking around about which genre is the better one, which show, which series, which topic, which subject. And we would joke, laugh. A few people would actually take it too damn seriously. But in the end, they realized that they're all fans. They like science fiction, fantasy, comics, manga, stuff that is not of reality. Because reality scares the hell out of people. And it should. It's life. Life scares the hell out of people. They don't like dealing with it, like dealing with fantasy. There was a movie called Ready Player One. And it is not the epitome, but it is an example. The book by a gentleman named of Klein. Cline. I hadn't read the books. I wish I had. Because one particular book is dealing with a reality, and the movie tries to emulate it. Where reality became so hard to deal with, so difficult, a lot of tragedy and things happened where people are in a totally depressed environment all over. And the only way to get past it is through a virtual reality. Virtual reality has been out for a hell of a long while since I think technology started. As soon as they came out with the damn goggles and they're talking about computerized worlds going on, that we started to deal with fantasy even more and more. We've had movies, we had books. Hell, we've had books earlier on talking about the new computer age that we're living in right now. To put on a goggle to see a computerized environment. And the only way you can interact with it is by creating a computer avatar to interact with it. There had been movies concerning about digitizing a self and putting yourself into that world. And I bet you a lot of people who are still maybe a little off kilter regarding fantasy would have loved to take it a chance. I kept seeing flaws in the situation, even though it was a nice flight of fancy. It's a hell of a fantasy to have, but the problem is, when you're dealing with the reality of the situation, is you're dealing with another world that has to work in reality because it's the only way powering this fantasy. And the same thing concerning about the world of Ready Player One, the Oasis. In order for the virtual reality to work, you need to have power from the real world to generate the kind of energy needs for this other world. It's totally dependent upon it and of the programming to create the environment. And because of the finished product over here still depends upon the real world to continue on. While our bodies are still here, our minds, our visual cortex, the senses in our skins are trying to tell us that we are interacting in the computer age. We are interacting with the computer world. Now, a lot of people saying, oh, we know this, we know this, we know this. Do we? Do we honestly know this? I mean, now we're getting into that kind of realm in the first place. Am I saying we shouldn't get into it? I'm saying we should be wary of it. Because it's easy enough to get involved in something totally self-absorbed in a situation where you lose track. Take it from a guy who's done that too many damn times in his life. I've almost come close to losing freedom and hurting someone. And I don't want to go through that again. Because in the process, you also hurt people around you that mean a damn to you. I was lucky enough I had good advice and stuck with it. So now I have to be wary of what I deal with and what I am. I'm a fanatic. I collect stuff, but I understand that even too much stuff, I'm going to get buried with it. I like watching shows because they take me away from reality, what's going on right now. They heat. If I'm going to be opening up that Pandora's box, politics, and everything that is poison touches. Everything. Situations happening around me, also politics involved. People's opinions, politics. Physical things that I depend upon, politics. Everything. Politics, politics, politics. The ugly thing about the Pandora's box at this point over here that we constantly have to deal with right now, and it sucks. Scratched my nose a little bit because it got a little itchy there. But in dealing with what we're dealing with right now, we have to be careful. We have to be careful of what we're dealing with and what we're living with right now because we cannot lose focus of what's going on around us, even though there's a lot of reasons to do so. I use YouTube to escape sometimes, to watch, to peruse, to entertain, maybe to educate me a little bit of what I didn't know. Watch news just to see what's happening around you, see all the bad stuff, maybe some of the good stuff as well. But still, all these videos that I keep doing are observations, personal opinions, nothing in the way of influencing others, just a way of me trying to get my thoughts out there because in eventuality that I am not here, at least I have a legacy of part of me out there. My own virtual reality, my own saving grace of a computer world is putting things on video and audio and storing them out there. And then in that way, as long as the power continues, there's still storage and nothing has been wiped out because of electromagnetic pulse. If nothing's happened to the server farms, if my account's still active, then maybe, just a little bit, I have gained a little bit of immortality of sorts. I don't need to have my head chopped off. I don't need to give my power to somebody else. But my knowledge is a different story altogether. I mean, tons and tons of audio I have done on myself to express to whoever listens, watches, and scratches their head thoroughly enough to trying to figure out who the hell is this schmuck here. My name is John Weaver. I exist in Roseman, California. I have an itchy leg because of the sweat going on right now. And at this point, I am trying to deal. I am trying to deal with what's going on in life right now. I am trying to focus on what needs to be focused on, which is education, which is going through a community college online course or two to learn about things around me. I hope I still can. I hope I'm able to pass off that information. I hope I learned how to be more open minded about a lot of things than anything else right now. So, after boring the living crap out of you at this point over here, because I know some of the videos do bore the living crap out of people. They'll listen to my stuff like, oh my god, he's boring as hell. What the hell is he? He's like Larry the Stormtrooper. He's not like a guy doing cooking here. He's not on a cruise show. He's not doing a mystery. What is he doing? What I'm doing is I'm talking. And if you're listening, either I have driven you completely, utterly mad, which you're pulling your hair out at this point over here, regardless if you're male or female, transgender. Well, the list goes on. Or has thoroughly pissed you off enough where you're saying, Google, take this guy out of here. He's completely blathering at the mouth. No, I'm not completely blathering at the mouth, nor am I foaming. I could. I could foam. No, I couldn't. No, I couldn't. I couldn't do that to myself. That means I have to be a rabid person. Last time I checked, I haven't had any rabidity. Anyway, that's enough of me blathering off my head. Like, dislike, comment, don't comment. View, don't view. Your choice. I'll probably be talking at you later if something else happens to talk about later. And it generally does.